Okay, good morning, everyone. From my part, it's time to start our first session today. Titled Use in Social Context. We have six presentations ahead of us. So let's start with the first one. Jasna is already here. In a middle and Jasna will teach pottery use, value, and social significance decorated bowls of the late Copper Age Eastern Croatia. Here you go, Jasna. You have 15 minutes.
Please remind me.
I will.
Because sometimes I lose idea of time.
And then let's leave some minutes for questions.
Well, as a organizer, I'm just more convenient. Okay, I will speak about decorated butcherable bowls because we wanted to check if these bowls have some social significance in the butcherable society. This is work which started only three weeks ago, so these are brand new results, some of them. Just a brief introduction about butcherable society. It is late Copper Age culture. I suppose everyone know that already. And it has hierarchical social certification, vertical social certification, which is reflected by burials, settlement organization, and some special finds, special objects like this one, ceramic boot from a butcherable site found almost 20 years ago. What we wanted to explore are decorated vessels. They are black polished with a variety of forms and very rich decoration made by incising, furrowing, notching. And all of these vessels have white incrustation as well. And they're very frequent in the pottery assemblage, beach on every archaeological site. And previous research showed that especially bowls with encrusted decoration are standardized products, which means these are results of some previous research. I will not talk about the statistical analysis because it's all published already. But what we know and what is important is that these kind of pots have really high coefficients of variation, indicating the presence of standardization, which means that there existed high demand in the society for this bowl, that they had more frequent production than other kinds of vessels. And of course, it meant that small number of artisans produce vessels for a large number of users and consumers. Which means that craft specialization existed, partial maybe, because we do not have standardization for all vessel classes, but only for these decorated bowls. Similar thing was observed also in the late Neolithic, as Maria knows also, in Inca culture. So we wanted to see if pottery decoration has any social significance. Is it related to prestige status or some special role of the consumers or owners of these pots? Of course, we know from archaeological research and other research that decoration, here, I'm sorry. The decoration does not necessarily have to be connected with some special status of the vessels or or activity in which vessels are used, such as this fine storage jar from Pueblo Zuni. It has only utilitarian role. In Vučedol, we have, on the other hand, rare pots with elaborated, unique pots, unique vessels with elaborated decoration. This is a unique one, only one was found. But at the same time, bowls with such decorations are very common, with high production rates, with high frequencies in the assemblage, which means, as I said already, many users use them, and they are not probably related to prestige or status because many people use them. So what is their meaning? Of course, we have to pay attention to the function of these bowls. Absence of use alterations, but I must say that our research done 3 weeks ago showed something completely different that they have in use. Lipid analysis showed probably used as waterproofing agent, very important. Each of them had different phases. And also, many of them were secondarily used as leads or in some other activities. At the site of Prisunia, Eastern Croatia, where excavations are here it is, where excavations started 5 years ago. We are working now on the functional analysis of pots and other technological analysis of pottery. And we have already some very interesting results. First of all, this one is very interesting because it was found, I think, 3 years ago with elaborated decoration, of course, but with also elaborated new surfaces, carbon deposits on the interiors with this very interesting ring. I'm not sure what it means yet. Maybe some of you may think about it and help me with this. But this use alteration indicates thermal food processing, which means that this bowl, this one, was used for probably cooking some kind of food. It also has on the interiors surface heating, which is typical for non-abrasive kitchen faces, which may indicate also some content of highly acidic contents. On the other hand, we have another specimen. This is, I think, very nice example of use alteration of use of non-abrasive processing with this stone preserved as an original surface, and some, I think, 1 centimeter below the ring starts this zone with heavily abraded internal surface, which indicates also probably fermentation or something similar. So it seems that these bowls were obviously used for really utilitarian everyday activities. And they had variety of uses, the primary function probably for serving and consuming food and drinks, but also for food preparation, food processing, probably storage of fermented drinks, and also they had secondary use. And all of this suggests that they had everyday usage with no special significance. But at the same time, these bowls were very frequently curated, repaired with drillings from outside, and the holes were joined with some kind of strips. This is very frequent for these kinds of vessels, which means that they were mended not, pardon me, it's okay, not because of some economic needs, but they also obviously had some socio-ideological meaning for individual, owner, or a member of some social group. Repairs are always markers of value because you repair only what is valuable to you, despite the fact that you have many other on your disposal, but for some reason people mended and curated the ones they own. So we're trying to think about the other possibilities, such as inheritance, probably, which is very interesting thing. If you remember the bowl I showed 3 slides ago, it was found on the floor of the house after its abandonment. The house was completely empty, but this bowl was left on the floor. So, as a conclusion or maybe possibility, we can regard this bowl as a sign of inheritance, some kind of connection with ancestors, and a means for legitimization of property, and of course, a means of strengthening the sense of belonging to either community, to the group identity, family, or household, or some other social group. Am I on time?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we have actually 6 minutes now for the next
I was
presentation.
fast.
So feel free to ask questions and share some thoughts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, when you find the pottery on the floor,
Yeah.
you find the entire shapes or a part of shapes.
It was the whole lesson. It was broken, of course, in situ, but it was the whole lesson. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. This is why we think that it was deliberately left there. So that is.
There is no intentional fragmentation.
No, there is no.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the presentation. My question would be, you told us at the beginning that these decorated pots were quite standardized.
Mm-hmm.
And could it be the evidence for mass production?
Of course, yes.
So,
It is evidence of mass production, but what actually Ina, my colleague, was working on the standardization of this appendix, and I was working on the standardization of Neolithic winter appendix. And we got almost the same results for one kind of vessel, only one kind of bowl for winter, and 2 typological classes of biconical bowls of Wucherel like copper assemblage. So the conclusion was that there was a partial standardization, partial specialization, because there was higher demand for this kind of vessels, and they were produced more frequently. For other vessel classes, we do not have evidence for standardization. We calculated all the coefficients and so on. There is no statistical evidence, but the new research will show something different.
I have a question about mending,
Mhm.
the repair of the pottery. I found this very, very impressive because I also know this phenomenon very well from beach contact. They have a lot of mended vessels, especially the black of and pottery beach. Yeah.
Very interesting, because I don't
No,
have.
early beach.
Yeah.
At least in Southern California,
Yeah.
the selection center have a lot of these, the always the racks in pedestal and the back of upper part.
And the black, yes.
Yeah,
They are
yeah,
different on black.
Yeah, it always comes with the back of the best quality
Yeah.
of the inventory. But I'm not really sure about that this is always that this is the meaning of the special meaning. Of course, the high quality to speak for this and the mandate as well. But I was thinking about is it possible that this is about the seasonal availability of
I
this,
agree,
this bear
yeah.
type?
I
If
agree.
it wasn't available every time, that's why they have to
Yeah. Actually,
mend it.
I also wrote about it in one occasion because that is really a possibility. But I don't think that in the group of these, let's say, vessels, we see some extra effort of
Yeah.
the maker to make them, to decorate them, to in case of light up, it's very challenging firing procedure. So I don't think that seasonal production would be crucial for mending. It seems to me, of
Okay.
course, maybe someone is not agreeing with me, but it seems to me that in these cases, it's more probable that they have some value for
Yeah. Basically, I agree. I'm just thinking about it because there's no any other sign except the quality
Yeah.
and the mending that this sport was so special because it always come
yeah,
among the base
yes,
with
yes.
with all
Yes.
with the other
Yes, well,
sports.
I suppose eventually everything
Yeah.
was disposed in this
Yeah.
way from another.
Yeah.
So this is also a thing that all of us should think about more. I think
Yeah.
it's really important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have two more questions from from the chat. So from Michaela Spataro, thank you very much. It says fantastic thoughts. I might have missed this. Any results from the residue analysis from the encrusted vessel jars? Thanks.
Yes, it was published in Ina's book from 2016. I suppose Michaela has it, or we will send to her.
Thank you. Jasna Klenberg also said super paper. Thank you. With use where do you see similar use alteration types on the same type of vessel to suggest a similar use life?
This is Claire. This is research from 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this is
Okay.
brand new.
And-
I don't know yet.
Okay, and Michaela added another question. Sorry, what the percentage of mended shirts are at the site of Vishnu?
I think about 2 or 3. I'm not sure, but I think 2 or 3% of each type, morphological type.
Okay, thank you, Jasna.
Thank you.
Okay, they are all saying thank you. We have a next presentation. I will introduce the participants, Zsuzsa Tegedush and Julie Dune. Social aspects of pottery use in the middle coverage of pavement basin, how fragmented supplement assemblages can help us reconstruct everyday life. Here you are, 15 minutes as well. I will remind you. Time. All right, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Zsuzsa Tegedush. I'm an archaeologist at the Hungarian National Museum, and I'm also a PhD student at the Petőfi Loránd University. My main research is
Teszek rá hangot.
No, just a second. This is okay. I think everything I put to prevent this. Okay,
it's fine now.
Sorry, I fine.
Okay. So my main field of research is the middle coverage of Eastern Hungary, and this is what I will talk about. Some results of the pottery analysis I carried out. Also with the results of a couple of organic residue analysis done by Dr. Julie Dunn at Bristol. So during the middle coverage, the eastern part of Hungary was partially at least occupied by the Halom culture. We don't know too many of their sites. However, we know that they lived on horizontal settlements On the excavations, we mainly find small, loosely structured settlements consisting of only a few features. Fortunately, we have like 3 or 4 exceptions. For example, Tisrūt's Shortcut is a really intense and complex settlement of more than 40 houses surrounded by a palisade. Another large site is Bucabran Banya 11B. It consists of more than 200 features, and in this presentation, I will focus on the results of the pottery analysis of this site. So the Hunyadi culture has a really distinct pottery style. However, we do not have large series of vessels. What we have are highly fragmented settlement assemblages, and it is really difficult to interpret these large amount of fragments. Thus, it is also difficult to reconstruct the pottery use of past communities. In my research, my goal was to find a method with which large quantities of fragmented pottery can be processed and their inner tendencies can be uncovered. This is what we need to understand how a community's pottery set was constructed, and of course, what type of social processes could have been in the background. So to do all of this, I used a series of statistical analysis. This, of course, began with a systematic data collection. From Bucabran, I analyzed the fragments of more than 9,000 vessels, about 18,000 fragments altogether. The fragments then were clustered based on the qualitative and quantitative data. Here we can see the results of different clustering methods. With this, in the end, vessels were separated by their size, quality, appearance, and shape. Thanks to this, it was possible to outline clearly distinct pottery groups in the whole set. The characteristics of these vessel groups were then linked to possible pottery functions with the use of ethno-archaeological samples. This was possible because practicality played a role in how these vessels were made. So overall, it was possible to pinpoint what type of vessels made up the Bucabran community's pottery set. The main functional categories are storage, cooking, and serving vessels, but there are also pieces that could have been made to serve different functions all at once. The ratio of these categories mostly reflects the intensity of the use. In the data set, it was the ring fragments that showed the most variety of functions. They were the easiest to identify. I will use the ring fragments as an example to show you what these pottery types look like at Bucabran. So, coarse clay-coated vessels were used for storage. Apart from the large storage vessels, we have vessels of liquid storage and also small vessels that could have been used to store small quantities of material. Cooking was done in massive stout pots. They are generally smaller with a ring diameter of under about 20 centimeters. This means that it was not possible to cook large amounts of food in them, which might hint to the fact that cooking was done in smaller quantities or even for smaller groups. We have other coarse pottery. It cannot be certainly determined what their function could have been. They can be regarded as multifunctional, as they can fit the criteria of multiple types. For example, these small open vessels here could have been used for individual serving, but also in the steps of cooking that didn't require heating. Food was consumed communally. We have large, fine, decorated vessels. A group of them is way shorter and more open, and another one is taller with a more closed shape. This type could have been used to serve more liquidy foods. The small, fine, closed mugs and cups can be interpreted as vessels of individual liquid consumption. And the more interesting group is the pieces of individual consumption of solid foods. This dark purple right here. This type almost exclusively consists of short-necked, compacted globular vessels. Even at first glance, these species stand out amongst the fragments. They are all carefully crafted and really similar. This might hint at the possibility that their standardization had a stronger social motivation. If we glance at the volume ranges of the wholly reconstructed vessels, we can see that the large storage vessels were like larger than everything else. We may have smaller vessels, and that the aforementioned individual consumption vessels had a volume of around 2 liters. To further inspect the degree of standardization of the individual serving vessels, more analysis were done. Here we can see that when we compare our qualitative and quantitative characteristics of fully reconstructed vessels, these ones really stand out. They are different in almost every aspect. To explore the level of standardization of the vessel types, the index of qualitative variation was also calculated. The lower this index is, the more standardized the vessel is. Here are a few variables on the slide. Amongst all of them, the vessels of individual consumption had the most standardized results. From this, it might be concluded that for the Hindihalom community, people eating together from their own very similar vessels was of high importance. Pottery production in this case reflects the social need to communicate unity and similarity when it came to eating, at certain times at least. So after all of this talk about the reconstructed and possible vessel uses, I want to show a bit more factual results. The results of the organic residue analysis of 75 Hindihalom fragments. So at the first stage of the analysis, 48 vessels were selected. Half of them were pots, and another half of them were the aforementioned individual serving vessels. In the case of the pots, it was determined that it was the smaller ones that actually contained organic residues, and not the large ones. On the other hand, the vessels of individual serving had a really great ratio of results, and interesting, a lot of them contained traces of milk. This hints to the possibility that warm milky food was eaten from these bowls. Encouraged by the results, 27 more samples of these bowls were analyzed, this time from the Cabrini side. But this yielded quite a different result. Turns out that this community at Cabrini ate less milk than the one at Galai, but more ruminant and non-ruminant fat. The difference in the use of the identical vessels might be found in the difference of the way of life at the sites. Galai is a really small and scattered settlement, while Cabrini is way more large and more intense. So to wrap it up real quick, the statistical analysis of pottery fragments might be handy when we want to understand how pottery sets could have been constructed, as it allows the comparison and differentiation of a wide array of pieces and types. A varying, wrong button, sorry. A varying degree of standardization can be seen in the case of vessels of different functions. This might mean that certain everyday tasks had more strict social rules associated with them, while other cases, the choice in pottery use and making was more free. And finally, I want to stress the importance of organic residue analysis, as it can give a really detailed picture of the food consumption. In this case, it highlighted that the two communities examined used similar vessels in sort of different ways. This might hint to the difference in sustenance strategies, food usage, and the difference in everyday life altogether. But of course, this still needs to be examined further. With this, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Rosa. Are there any questions? We're on time, so we have enough time for some discussion. I will pay attention to our chat. Somebody has a question online. Okay, Lana? I wanted to kind of starting with they were already starting with the policy. Do you have any evidence that they were working?
Yeah.
That's what I was really wondering about this very good presentation.
Yeah, it's well, first they don't have any traces of sooting on them, and they are truly really fine vessels with really thin walls. I discussed this with Julie, and her opinion is that a good liquid preservation can be reached when you don't cook in the vessel, but you serve hot food in it, because it permeates the material a bit similar. So if these vessels were used for a longer time to serve hot food, a high liquid yield is possible.
Yeah, I have a similar question, but I want to thank you. This is really nice work, and I hope you will publish it soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosa. Let's prepare for our next participant. I hope I will read all the names correctly. If I don't do that, please tell me. Silva Fabian, Tibor Martin, and Peter Chipan. Reconsideration of the concept of form and function to the pottery of the late Copper Age Baden complex. So we are still in the Copper Age, and this is our last presentation.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say thank you for the organizer to accepting our paper, and I can be here. I'm very grateful. My name is Silvia Fabian, and with my colleagues and my team, I would like to present as a showcase now, our National Research Development and Innovation Fund research program, Changing Horizon of Material Culture. And this research focuses on the complex study of the settlements of late Copper Age Baden complexes, but from 3,800 until 2,900 BC, covering this time left. Our main target is mapping the activity zones within the settlements, identifying household units and sets of tools for everyday activities, reconstructed for spatial distribution of artifacts, pottery, animal, and human bones, etc. But of course, this presentation, we would like to we will focus on pottery as one of the investigated sites at Avoyns 26, where the settlement is connected to the Proto-Belarus horizon. And let me say a few words about this horizon, just to place it. The emergence of this horizon in the Great Hungarian Plain, it was indicated by the appearance of the Trans-Siberian Furhenstich pottery and more common ceramic types. Nandor Kalisz, the renowned archaeologist in Hungary, summarized the new phenomenon in the late 60s. And in his first suggestion, the so-called Proto-Belarus material was equal to the late phase of the Balaton-Lazanya sequence, but based on mostly this presence of so-called Furhenstich decoration and some more Central European elements. He suggested a stronger cohesion connection between these culture units, second and third parts, and later during the 80s he suggested that this later phase was independent and it would be connected more with the late Copper Age Baden complex. This map shows the general overview of the protopolarized sites now in the Carpathian Basin, and of course, because of field research, we can some accumulation around Budapest. Oh, and sorry, and based on some EMS radiocarbon dates, which we have seen before, we can assume that this transition between the early and late stage, so-called formative phase of late Copper Age, and occurred over a relatively short period. It was just after the Hunyadi period, mostly 3,780 and 3,650 BC. And now let me say a few words just very shortly about the site. Abony is located on eastern part of Pest County in central Hungary, and it's about 15 kilometers from the Tisza River. The site was surveyed by preventive excavation, and because it was a clay mine, which was endangered the site. The remains of the settlement was connected completely to this protopolarized horizon, and the site excavated area was more than 136 meters square. So on the site, it's the spatial distribution of regular and irregular pits and pit complexes, and finds and artifacts within them suggest the separation of domestic area, economic area, and we could detect areas of symbolic activity also. So it's a quite good site to research, to see this community households and any kind of activity to see the form. So our research takes an interdisciplinary approach, combining archaeological and multidisciplinary methods to understand the function of pottery on this settlement. And the functional studies allows us to determine ceramic roles in the everyday life, like storage, cooking, drinking, serving, transport, fermentation, so on. So it is difficult to reconstruct the function of the different vessel types, which are not necessarily derived from the terminology of the traditional typology. Of course, classical typology has focused primarily on forms, nomenclature taken from ethnographic parallels and vessel types of other areas, especially antique cultures. So often needs a clarification and understanding, because the actual function may differ significantly from that suggested by the name. Every vessel goes through 3 distinct stages in its lifestyle, like manufacture, use, and discard. Manufacture consists of the fashioning of the pot for some intended function from raw materials obtained from the environment. This is followed by the utilization of the pot for either food storage purpose, followed by its use for other purposes. When it's no longer useful, usually due to fragmentation, it's discarded in some places in the settlement, and the fragments are then incorporated into the archaeological deposits. By examining the organic material extracted from the vessel walls, we can define these functions, and we have reconstructed based on this metric data and economic properties. Just let's run through the typology of this so-called protopolarized horizon. And first, let's see these cups and mugs, which are quite common form also in this period, assemblage and represent the predominant type. The mug with S profiles or hemispherical body with a curving mouth, it's significant vessel type discovered in relatively large numbers. Four-hand style decoration can be found mainly on these vessels form. Jugs usually have cylindrical necks and belly bodies with the cylindrical neck, often somewhat out curving. According to the shape of their handles, these spines are classified into subtitles. Now, we don't want to present here all the subtitles that we had taken. And here you can see one particular variation of a jug. It's a so-called milled jug, which is an iconic type of the former Bodrokerestur culture. This vessel type was accumulated in only one structure deposition in the site of Abony. But we have to take into consideration right now. Bowls, the most characteristic form as a coronated open bowl without rim and biconical body. And of course, also there are the types with S profile and hemispherical shape. Pots These types also exist in several variations, with short necked form, with a biconical body. This is the most common variant, and pots with wide mouth and biconical body, narrow neck type one. Actually, those vessels of type usually varied with the openness and of course the place of the handles on them. And those vessels of this type with a high to the diameter ratio of less than 1 have been distinguished also as a pot balls, and we collected here them too. And last piece is the storage vessel type, which is actually similar shape like the pots, but of course much more extensive volume and wall thickness, often with coarse surfaces. And this is these types which we have taken into consideration in our analysis. Let's go a little bit about, let's say a few words about the petrographic analysis. This period is characterized by increased variability in the raw materials in pottery production. Potters use several calcareous and non-calcareous raw materials, tempered with sand and or grob. The most common practice is the grob tempering, which appears in all raw material types. Our petrographic evaluation of the ceramic material is based on 40 pots fragments, which we can consider representative. Nevertheless, 3 groups were observed based on the preparation of raw material. The raw material of the ceramics in the first group were poorly prepared. Due to this, the ceramics are porous and fragmentary, and their firing temperature would not be high. The second group includes better quality ceramics, which are less porous, and the raw material is also more compact, indicating better preparation. And the third group includes denser ceramics, which are even less porous fabric and than the previous groups. And luckily, we could connect already, and we have grouped also the ceramic forms to these raw material preparation groups. Functional studies allow us to determine the role of ceramics in everyday life. Also, like I mentioned before, so this can shed light on the settlement, everyday activity and social interaction, and trends among the vessel forms and other archaeological finds. We try to delineate activity areas in the settlement. So to add more data to our investigation, we defined the diagnostic parts of each type of vessel form, so we could increase the number of usable sources for our statistical analysis. In our site, we had around nearly 2,000, maybe even a little bit more than 2,000 fragmented pieces. So we wanted to add this all to the data. So the strongly fragmented finds were also obtained using 3-dimensional modeling, and based on our statistical evaluation of this new metric data, we could verify the ceramic typology developed for the site. And here you can, on this cross lab, based on the 2 properties, the vessel openness was obtained from the rim and the vessel surface ratio. This is the y-axis. And volume was calculated from the measurement based on the 3D images, that is the y-axis. And if we add the vessel form to the data, we get well-defined groups. We can see that the measure of cups and mugs doesn't vary too much, just like pots. In contrast, the bowls can be found in a wide range of sizes, meaning that the cups and the mugs would have had a well-defined drinking function, for example, in serving sets. Still, the bowl could have had several other functions besides eating and serving, for example, cooking or storage. In the case of Abon site, we also investigated the correlation between the pit types and the ceramic finds in them. In this case, we used the wall thickness of the vessel fragments, and relying based on the simple hypothesis that the drinking and or serving vessels generally have thinner wall and finer walls than cooking and storage vessels. So if we see the distribution of these fragments among the pit types, we can state that the larger pit complexes show, of course, a much more heterogeneous picture in quantity and vessel types composition than the high shape and regular pits. They do not contain sherds and other fines or much smaller amount. And the ceramic from distribution also seem to shift towards cooking and storage vessels in these storage pits. And all of these may indicate different treatment for discard and traces of activities. Okay, thank you. Here we can see the spatial distribution of these pottery types regarding the location of their discard disposal. The spatial distribution of the different vessels types in the pit complexes, storage pits and ritual deposits, which show comparable patterns of significant importance. This distribution may also indicate the functionality of each settlement area, a key insight in our research. Both a type of vessel which the most significant metric variants are found almost throughout the settlements, you could have seen the first slide, but are also explicitly accumulated in one pit complexes. And mugs and jugs as a drinking vessel type are concentrated in the pit complexes, but also occur in the ritual pits of the settlement, and which are here. Let me see if this is yeah. And pots, a diverse formal function group, are predominantly characteristic of pit complexes. However, they are also an important type of vessel deposited in ritual pits, showcasing the complexity of our findings. And in contrast, storage vessels occur specifically more in regular or often behind-shaped pits. All this suggests that the ceramic material deposited in each feature type indicates different activities in the surrounding. Reconstruction of food or stored in these pots, we proceeded with residue analysis also, organic residue analysis, by examining the vessel wall extracted from the vessel walls. So we try to refine the function of these pots. This slide represents the preliminary results of the previous functional analysis. And thirdly, we could have analyzed 30 pot shards using this pyrolysis gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, and the samples was taken also protobolary as a some from Baden period. What we can see here, so based on this literature, based on the literature data, the proportion of each fatty acid ester indicates the samples of origin. For example, the ratio of palmitic acid and to stearic acid between 1 and 2 indicates more fatty acid of animal origin, and the ratio greater than 3 indicates more plant origin. And also among terrestrial animals, a distinction between ruminant and non-ruminant animals can also be made based on the relative ratios of shorter chain saturation fatty acids and branched chain C17 fatty acid. The PCA is based on the ratio of fatty acids here, and fatty acids of animal or plant origin determine the first axis, which is the excellent, this one, and by the ratio of shorter chain fatty acids, which branched chain, which would suggest ruminant and non-ruminant lipids, is the epsilon axis. The pattern in the proportion of components shows that the contents of bore and pot type vessel are connected more to animal or mixed origin anyhow. And in contrast, some mugs and cups type vessel are characterized by plant origin, indicating their different function. And however, these differences are more nuanced according to the amount of each ingredient, the type of vessel, including in the studies such as sieve, which is here you can see, and the bowl containing additional special material, and the vessel with zoomorphic ornament can interpreted as an outlier. The occurrence of some of the components is more directly indicative of the former contents of the vessel, such as the solid ruminant animal lipids detected in the case of the sieve. So this might suggest, even if we didn't have that sort of residue analysis, that it might connect it to milk or dairy products. And a longer hydrocarbon chain detected in one of the bowls indicates BVAX is this one. Already was mentioned before. And the content of one of the marks indicate the red berries fruity components. When samples containing individual markers are removed from this PCA, it becomes more visible that the organic residue of certain vessel shapes can be found in similar range, while the organic residue of variable size of bores range over a broad spectrum. So this may indicate also a specialized use of certain types of vessel for certain foods for beverage, and indicates that the bowls are mostly used for several different tasks. And the conclusion, what we could arrive now. So mapping the distribution of the vessel types in the different kind of feature enable the clarification of the vessel functions. The fragmentation of deposition of discard and traces activities such as everyday practices or symbolic action may indicate different treatment. Specialized use of certain types of vessel for certain foods and beverage can be assumed. The distribution of drinking vessel type like cups, mugs, and jugs on the site mostly overlaps. The fragments are connected in the long-term use of big complexes. Pots and bowls fragments are scattered in the domestic and ritual areas, but some differences can be made regarding their content. These vessel types are part of the community symbolic life also. The storage vessels are strongly connected to the domestic area. These are hardly appear among the structural deposition find. And and at last, but not least, the ceramic investigation presented here cannot be considered, of course, close. Here we want to show a combined methodological approach, an experiment on cases where the traces of everyday life are preserved in only different types of pits, and so the social-cultural relation of the past community can be reconstructed based on these data only. Thank you very much. Time.
Sylvia, thank you very much. Do we have any questions here? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move forward chronologically. And our next presentator is Oleg Kosha. Presentation title: Increase in the capacity of vessels of the late Bronze Age Kava culture. And this is our first online presentation.
Is it working?
Everything. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hello, everyone. Is it working?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So, dear organizers, thank you for the opportunity to present my work today, and sorry for I can't be there in person. As you can see, I will speak about the increased capacity of some vessel types of the late Bronze Age Gava culture from the Carpathian Basin. And my main question is what pattern of development can be observed compared to the previous periods, and what were the reasons behind it. The spatial position that will be discussed is concentrated in the eastern part of the Carpathian Basin, which is the distribution area of the pre- and Proto-Gava pottery style in the BD A1 period. And later it is the area of the classical Gava culture in the A2 B1 period. I marked 3 sites that are part of my PhD thesis. However, I will refer only to Bakstemeto part and Poroslo upon Hat, among other sites. The chronological extent of the presentation will focus on the classical Gava period from the A2 to B1 phase. However, the study of previous periods is also essential to understand the processes of change. Consequently, it is necessary to examine the periods up to the tumulus culture, which means to the Reineke BC period. For this study, I have selected some very well-defined group of artifacts. The most important criteria was the context, namely the exact place of discovery. It was essential to be
Oh, Paulette, I'm really sorry that I am interrupting you. Can you please start the slideshow because we only see the title of the presentation.
Oh. Then I go back, and how can I start it?
I think you need to stop.
Wait a second. Start again.
You need to stop the share screen and then start sharing your screen again and share the full screen, the first option that pops up, and then it should work.
Can you see now the other slide? Still not. Now maybe?
Now it's moving, it's perfect.
Can you see the chronology now?
Yes. We can see and you can proceed, yes.
Okay, great. Sorry. So it was essential to be an enclosed structure, and if possible, also the vessels found in them should be either hoards or could be associated with a feast or a special event. The following vessels are fine quality materials requiring a high level of expertise with well-polished, shining surfaces and exceptionally executed decorations. In all cases, their function was most probably serving vessels based on their quality and decoration, and since no spots or marks indicate cooking or other secondary firing. Unfortunately, no component analysis is yet known from these areas, so we do not have data on the exact contents of the vessels, but the rise of these studies may slowly give us a better understanding of this region. As it can be seen, the vessels were usually found in the pits in either intact condition or in broken pieces. In Oslar, 6 complete bowls and 2 mugs were arranged in a specified order, while in Sankrayineni, a large storage vessel was buried in a standing position. In Tisabura, no precise arrangement could be identified from the ceramic pieces. However, based on the filling of the pit, it happened from a specific direction and at a specific time. So it is an imprint of a certain event. In Baksh, the large pieces lying close together were covered by an almost complete skeleton of a deer, so it is likely to be the imprint of some sort of social event. Apart from the finds from closed pits found in settlements, ceramic hoards must be examined as well. Based on Gabor Weisabo's research, 3 hoard types can be separated, and these are the followings. First, the group of some large and medium-sized storage vessels. This hoard type was typical during both the pre- and proto-Gavo and also the classical Gavo periods. The second group contains all the lone-standing, nicely polished and decorated large storage vessels. This hoard type was only typical during the classical Gavo period, so from the Hajat A2 to B1. And the last group contains much more ceramics, drinking and serving sets that consist of several pieces of cups, bowls, and food or beverage containers. This hoard type is mainly dominant in the Reneke BD Hallstatt A1 period, and they no longer prevalent in later periods. To start with, the tumulus culture is not so well represented by ceramic hoards or assemblages. The one from Oslar Nyarfaszög only contained 2 mugs and 6 bowls, which may have been the belongings of a small family or 1 or 2 persons. Their capacities are quite small, ranging from 0.9 to 2.2 liters in all cases. The hoard from Debrecen is now made up of several pieces, with 2 larger serving containers with capacities of 6.5 to 7.3 liters. Almost the same number of handled mugs and bowls of different styles and decorations are also found in here, suggesting that a certain number, perhaps 14 to 16 people's personal vessels were buried together. Some changes can be observed in the BD Hallstatt A1 period. Alongside the more personalized sets of mugs and bowls, larger and medium-sized container assemblages are also introduced. Tiszabura Ganajosát contained one large, 3 medium containers, and a bowl. Features 793 from Nyíregyháza had 9 vessels, of which 4 can be seen here, and feature 573 had one large container in their rather shallow pits. Tisza-Csege-Sóskás is somewhat mixed, as it did not only consist of nicely polished and black burnished containers, but some red-colored cooking vessel quality pieces too. If we take a closer look at the capacity of the containers, we can see that there is usually one larger container that stands out from the other containers that are roughly the same volume. In Tiszabura, the largest vessel could hold up to 75 liters if fully loaded. Tisza-Csege almost 55 liters and the second largest 44 liters, while the lone standing vessels from Nyíregyháza 64 liters. The rest of the vessels varied from 8 to a little bit above 20 liters. In the Hallstatt A2 B1 period, there seems to be quite a big jump in the size of the containers. I have selected some vessels with incredible dimensions, up to 50-60 centimeters height, and some with a neck diameter of more than 45 centimeters. I would like to draw your attention to the figure on the left, where all the large pots were discovered from the same pit, from feature 20, which I will return to a bit later. Of the vessels seen here, the one from Poroslo was part of a larger pit, together with several other ceramic fragments, while the other 3 pots were buried alone in single pits in a standing position. Sankraieni is also special in that it contained a grinding stone and loom weights inside, while the contents of the other 2, Bodrog-Keresztúr and Tiszaladány, are unknown. Capacity has dramatically increased compared to the previous periods. All of the containers that were buried alone are over 100 liters, or 150 by Sankraieni. And although the pieces from Baksh are highly fragmentary, 90 liters can easily be assumed in their cases too. If the numbers of the three periods are put together, certain aspects became clear. In the tumulus period, there are no significantly outstanding vessels, but rather smaller personalized jars and bowls. The overall average is 2.9 to 3 liters maximum. During the pre- and proto-Gava period, a certain pattern can be detected. The assemblages usually contain one, or in the case of Tisza-Csege, 2 larger vessels, while the rest are rather similar in capacity. The larger ones are 2 or 3 times bigger than the middle-sized ones. The overall average is just above 20 liters. In the classical Gava period, the vessels cannot be interpreted as a set. However, by comparing the capacities, it can be detected that the overall average is above 90 liters. But what can be the reason behind such a growth? And which of the listed options can be considered for the classical Gava period? I highlight 3 main aspects: social, economic, and ritual, at the intersection of which 2 and 2 possibilities were outlined. These possibilities will be a little further analyzed. The first aspect would mean a stronger economic or strategic influence together with every other areas of life grows exponentially. The good economic concentration is quite visible on the distribution map of the Hajdúböszörmény type bronze objects. While the map of the Hallstatt A2 B1 settlements, it can be observed that the largest and richest sites, the so-called mega settlements, were located next to the largest river, the Tisza. Both Poroslo and Baksh is right next to the Tisa River in a strategically well-protected location marked by the red dots. However, communities can still show power even when their economic and strategic influence is declining or when they are in a less influential position. One example for this maintaining power can be found in the Iliad from Homer. There is a part when the burial of Patroclus is described. Even though at this point the Greek army is in failing position, since Achilles did not take part in the fights and are losing, yet they send Patroclus off with a grand funeral, slaughtering a large amount of livestock. There are also two social ritual aspects. By the increased number of vessels and thus the increased quantities of food, it can be assumed that perhaps a larger group or a wider part of the community could take part in these festivities and not just the fighting men. Previously, we could see that with all the cups and bowls, the ceramic hoards seemed to be more personalized, just as the Middle Bronze Age Hajdú-Sámson hoard is a great example that only a little group of men could participate in the rituals. Could this private cycle have widened? Could other men or women or families also join? Or did a new custom emerge, some other form of celebration? Do these large vessels indicate that beverage or food were consumed together instead of the previously seen personalized vessels? Some ethnographic illustrations are good examples of this consuming from a common pot, which would explain the large growth of the bowls as well. And finally, the ritual economic aspects are also twofold. Apart from all the metal hoards of show-off, can be detected during the Hallstatt A2 and B1 among settlements. An interesting anomaly is the question of fortified settlements closely built together. You may see on the picture Abasár Hajnácskő and Abasár Rónyabérc on the left, and Bakony-Szent László Keselőhegy and Bakony-Szent Király Zöröghegy on the right. They were built so close together that communities of the time could almost shout over to each other. In the Carpathian Basin, food wastage is difficult to detect, but Near Eastern pictures show that food waste was a common practice, especially in ritual settings. And last but not least, a strong economic background and no external threats made more room for celebrations or ritual events. If communities do not have to fear external attacks, threats to their daily livelihoods, or internal conflicts, they have more opportunities for spiritual prosperity. During the Reineke, BD, and Hallstatt A1 period, fortified settlements were widespread, covering surprisingly large areas. The unanimous explanation for their existence is not yet clear, mainly because of their size, but it is certain that the fortifications do not exist in the classical Gavo period anymore, at least in the Great Hungarian Plain, as can be seen in the huge 45-meter-long section wall of Poroslo-upon-Het. And now let's go back to the previously mentioned feature 20 from Baksh, where 6 storage vessels were covered by the skeleton of a young stag. By reconstructing the artifacts found here, we can get an idea of how many people could take part in such a festivity. If we calculate with 80 to 90 liter large containers and 45 liter medium containers, then we can assume a minimum of 440 liters of beverage. According to archaeological studies, a young deer would provide 57 to 94 kilograms of edible meat. The remains of the other domestic animals and fishes are so small and, unlike the deer, were not laid in an anatomical order that the amount of meat extracted from them is not known. If, like István Vörös, we count half a kilo of meat per person, then 114 to 188 persons could possibly take part in this feast. If the 440 liters divided by this number of people gives us 2.3 to 3.8 liters of consumed beverage per person, which almost coincides with the 2 liters of beer counted at wedding nowadays. Finally, let us look very briefly at metal beverage containers also from the Hallstatt B1 period. The citulae of the Hajdú-Böszörmény horizon had the capacity from 11 liters to 25 liters. This shows a slightly more uniform picture. Most of the citulae are found alone and out of context, while the rest are either part of a large weapon hoard or combined with other beverage-making utensils, such as cauldrons and strainers. Their uniform capacity and the presence of weapons suggest that they remain part of the rituals of warrior communities. Overall, it can be concluded that already in the BD Hallstatt A1 period, the vessel assemblages start to grow and rearrange, finally reaching astonishing sizes in the Hallstatt A2 and B1 period. One of the reasons for this could be the strong economic position and the secure environment, which gave room for both growth and prosperity in the prevalence of rituals and celebrations. External factors must not be forgotten either, such as the agricultural transition phase that characterized the earlier phase of the late Bronze Age was over and consolidated. Therefore, an increasing production also characterized the classical Gava communities, which brought with it an increase in population as well. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Paulette.
No.
Thank you.
It's a very interesting presentation. I will see now in the room if there are some questions for you here.
Okay.
Nothing. For you here. Okay, thank you very much, Paulette. This was very, very, very interesting.
Thank you also.
Thank you for joining us
And stay.
and stayed with us. Now again.
Here. And the title of her presentation is Stable Altar versus Imported Altar in Roman Latvia.
First of all, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to present for this conference. As part of my PhD thesis that focuses on the study of locally made table altar and the imported altar in Roman Dacia, this presentation wants to bring to attention several observations and questions regarding these categories. Although this area was barely researched until now, I will focus on the first part of the presentation on some technical aspects in order to understand how the material was interpreted so far. Roman Dacia was a province that was under the Roman Empire just for 166 years. We're talking about the second and part of the 3rd century AD. So the study of its material culture can show us the level of its cultural integration. I studied so far material from 4 important sites of the province, and I was able to observe the diversity of products coming from all over the Roman Empire. The sites are Ultima Traiana Sarmisegetuza, the capital. The next site is Apulum. This was a very important center of Roman Dacia. Here 2 towns developed. A legion was also stationed here.
The palace of the governor was present here too, and also port. Another important center was the town called Napoca, and the last one was Porolisum, a center placed on the frontier of the province, where was present a fort and also a town later. The presentation will be focused, first of all, on showing for the first time some aspects regarding the local production of table amphorae, and then a short overview of the imported amphorae present in this province. 3 table amphorae workshops are known so far. One of them is from Apulum, and another one very close to it in a rural area called Shibotompej. Here we can see some of the wasters discovered in these production centers. And another workshop seems to be in the Porolisum area. And here can be observed also a new shape that seems to be characteristic for this area. What is very interesting in the case of this table amphorae is that they clearly imitate Gallic amphora produced in Gallia Belgica, mainly the Gauloise 12 type. The morphological characteristics, as can be seen, are very similar. And what is interesting is that in the case of this table amphorae produced in Dacia, the decoration is not incised as can be observed in this drawing, as on the Gauloise 12 amphorae, but is painted on the body and also on the handles. And this decoration is present on all the fragments I've studied so far of this local production. Here are just a few examples of the documented material from several sites. And also some examples of the table amphorae that were published so far from a few sites from Dacia, mainly from the northern part and the central part of the province. Table amphorae were produced in many provinces of the empire. Here are just a few examples of some table amphorae produced in the provinces Mesa Inferior and Mesa Superior. Lisha, located in southern Turkey, has a very interesting production too. I was able to see some of these table amphorae as I am working on a site from this region called Mira, a project of the Austrian Archaeological Institute from Vienna. And as I was saying, I was able to study some of these table amphorae because I work as an assistant in the study of pottery under the direction of Dr. Philip Bess, to which I am grateful for the knowledge and help offered. Regarding the Eastern and Western Mediterranean, as in the case of the most Roman provinces, there needs to be completed these typologies of table amphorae because this is a category that barely received attention so far. I want to underline in this sense that there is also another category that could be confused with table amphorae because of their morphological characteristics. That is the case of the small versions of amphorae. Here we can see a small version of this Dressel 24 Similis type. This was an olive oil amphora produced in Chios, Erythrae, and probably Cumen. And another one of these Dressel 24 amphora, wine amphora produced in many centers in the empire. I wanted to make shortly this distinction because the interpretation of these two categories is different because of the content that is transported in them, which is of high quality for this category, in contrast with the one stored in the table amphorae. In the study of this category, it's important to take into account also the capacity. And as was observed now for Dacia, there seems to be a variation in the capacity of the same types, which raises some questions in this regard. I made a few capacity calculations also for the table amphorae produced in Mesa Inferior and Mesa Superior. And the same variation can be observed here. The study I made so far raised some questions and helped me to make some remarks in this sense. One of the questions is the shape all the time inspired from existing types? In some cases, the shape seems to be inspired from existing types, but again, these typologies need to be completed so we can have a clear image in this sense. Another question is, what does the volume variation in the stable anchor means? I don't have an answer for this yet, but the remark still stands because there seems to be big variation sometimes in the volume of the same types of table anchor, and not only in the case of the ones produced in Dacia, but also in the case of the ones produced in other Roman provinces. A third question is, can we speak in all the cases of regional distribution of all these table anchor? Some of these table anchors seem to be part of a regional trade system. This statement is sustained also by the discovery by the author of some fragments of table anchor that were produced most probably in Messiah Superior. The epigraphic material discovered in some sites from Dacia attests also the existence of this regional trade. For example, one inscription from Porolissum attests a tradesman who exported wine from Tracia and Mesa Interior to Dacia. So we have to take into account also the kind of containers that we're using for this. And the last question is, can we speak in all the cases about the wine content? Maybe this is not the case for all the provinces, but for Dacia, wine seems to be the only possible content of this table anchor. Now, regarding imported amphora, I will make a quick overview of the main areas from which these are imported, and I was able to observe in the studied material. I must underline that the variety is much bigger than the one observed here, but I want to show more the trends and the areas most popular. One of them is the Pontic area, and it's represented especially by this South Pontic amphora produced in Sinop. Then Aegean wine is very well represented in Dacia by several types. One of them is this Capitan II amphora, which is quite common and is present so far in each site that I've studied. Then this Dresser 2-4 coast type is another example, but in this case, this amphora is found in small quantities. Rhodian amphora are also present here, but not in big quantities so far. Different variants of West Asia Minor amphora are found, transporting most probably an expensive wine. And also the quantities in which these are found is not very large. A type that is found in small quantities is this Aegean cylindrical one, a type most probably produced in Cilicia. And Western products are also present in Dacia, but in small quantities. One example is this North Italian amphora of Lipopoli type. Now coming to some concluding observations regarding the social implications in production. Regarding the morphological characteristics, there can be observed here clear influences in production. The shape is inspired, as I said, by this Gaulois 12 type amphora, which raises some questions regarding the choice for this shape and the knowledge to reproduce some of its main characteristics and adapt some of them. The current archaeometrical analysis made for a number of samples that I've studied from production and consumption sites from Dacia might give also new insights regarding the transmission of knowledge and their social implication. And in this sense, could be explored also some social aspects of production, such as the study of the learning context and the level of production specialization. Regarding consumption, food and drink satisfy, first of all, the basic needs of man. But to these primary needs to nourish the body, the Romans and also other civilizations attributed meanings that were associated with a person's social and cultural environment. The ideas projected on food and drinks and how they should be consumed were applied within society, thus existing differentiations between the elite and the other social categories. Although these consumption patterns constitutes element of differentiation within society, they are at the same time also means by which an individual affirms his belonging to a certain society. And one premise that I think can be applied also in the interpretation of my research is that economy is motivated by shared values. The presence of this imported amphora and then the production of local wine stored in table amphora come to confirm this idea. The study of table amphora and imported amphora showed that different types and quality of wines were accessible to other social categories. The table amphora must have stored for a short period the local wine, while the imported amphora were transporting the high quality product. When talking about imports, the variety of products present on the market of this province indicates that the elite had a strong purchasing power, but this is not a surprise considering the rich resources that were exploited from this province. In conclusion, the study of imported amphora and put together with the study of the local production of table amphora is still at the beginning for many provinces, and aspects such as the social implications in production and consumption are still waiting to be explored more. The pieces of information that we are able to get at the moment show us an empire where products and ideas related to their consumption travel and take certain shape for each region of the empire. It can be observed that consumption represents a main tool in constructing one's identity, and this can be applied also for the case of Asia, a province which is very well connected with the eastern part of the empire regarding trade, but which still seems to be influencing its local production also by Western products. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, in this case, we started a bit earlier, so we have plenty of time for the class. Do we have any questions here? No?